Inspector General Committee meeting. At this point of time, I'd like the clerk to call the roll.
State Attorney Ehrenberg, Public Defender Howitt, Vice Chair Headley,
Present.
Chair Kreidel,
Present.
Commissioner Cummerland,
Present.
Commissioner Pearman, Commissioner Schulman.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is our, as I said, semi-annual meeting. This is our get-together, meet and greet, find out, ask questions, and deal with whatever we need to deal with as a committee. That we have a specific agenda. We have 4 items on the agenda beyond this point. And I think at this point, I would ask Inspector General Carey to come to the podium and, well, no, actually, I apologize. We need to do the minutes first. The minutes from the June 1, 2017 meeting have been provided to you. Commissioners, committee members, do you have any questions, corrections, or observations?
Nope.
Hearing none, is there a motion to accept the minutes from the June 1, 2017 committee meeting as presented?
So move.
Moved by Commissioner Headley. Is there a second?
I second.
Moved by Commissioner Cummerland. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the minutes are approved as presented. Now I'll move to item 5, and Inspector General Carey will lead us through his status report.
Well, good morning, and it's great to see you here. First of all, I want to give a special welcome to Commissioner Chief Brian Cummerland. So welcome. I know you've been to a number of Commission on Ethics meetings, but this is your first IG committee meeting, so welcome to the committee. So I also, before we start in our presentation, every 3 years, the Commission on Florida Law Enforcement Accreditation comes and assesses our office for state accreditation. Just yesterday, they had their on-site team that did an assessment of our office, and I'm happy to report that they stated that we came through with flying colors. We were compliant with all of the requirements of the commission, and so they're going to recommend to the commission that we are reaccredited. So they send a report the next step, and then when the accreditation board meets early next year, we will be then reaccredited. So this is the second reaccreditation that we've had since we've been here. We were one of the first, I think, county IGs accredited. My predecessor had us accredited underneath as an inspector general shop, and then again this is the second time. So a great staff, particularly Cynthia Surreal is not here today. She's our accreditation manager. She's been here before, but she's led us and she keeps us on track to make sure that we're compliant with the standards. And it's really not just, again, Cynthia, it's primarily our investigation staff. It's something that you just don't get ready for the week of or before. It's a culture of doing things right, of keeping evidence properly, of doing reports right, of doing all of our steps right. So it's a culture, it's a daily function. So all of our investigative staff just did an outstanding job in getting ready for this.
Thank you. I would like to note for the record that Public Defender Carey Howard is now present.
Good morning. Also, before we start, I'd like to recognize my fellow veterans. Tomorrow, of course, is Veterans Day is recognized, and it's also the 242nd birthday of the United States Marine Corps. So for all of my fellow veterans and Marines, I want to wish them the best and thank them for their service. We have 2 of them here also with me, who, of course, you know I'm a retired Marine. We have Jeff Whaley, Air Force veteran, and Tony Montero, another Air Force veteran that we have in our office here. And so I guess let's get into our brief. This is what we're going to cover here today. Again, just a review of our mission. And this time, I thought since we have a lot of new folks on the staff, and some turnover and some promotions, I wanted to particularly introduce some of my staff personally during this time and let them give a little bit of their background, our activities, our budget, where we're going in the future, and then a summary.
Sounds good.
First of all, our mission, again, to provide, very important, we talked about this, independent and objective insight, oversight, and foresight in promoting integrity, efficiency, and overall effectiveness in government. At the end of the day, it's enhancing public trust in our government. That's kind of where we start, and in one of our last slides, we'll talk about what we do to enhance that public trust in government. Again, here's the way I'd like to present it in a image. Again, it's not about, again, just oversight, which is a critical role of the IG world, of holding government accountable for our taxpayers' dollars and for the resources and the power we have. That's a critical part of what we do. We hold government accountable, shine that light, but equally as important is that insight role, coming along good people, helping to make good government better, recommending best practices, promoting efficiency and effectiveness, and then foresight, always looking ahead and preventing, better to prevent fraud, waste, abuse, bad things happening than to investigate it after the fact. So a lot of what we do is in that preventative mechanism, getting out and about, educating, showing best practices, showing red flags, things to work out for, lessons learned of things we've learned along the way. Now, the introduction to my IG team is particularly important because we have 3 new division heads since the last time we met. Yes?
At this point, I'd also like to acknowledge that State Attorney, I'm sorry, I just had a blank moment. Mr. State Attorney David Arenberg has just joined us. It's what happens when SWAT shows up at your house at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
Please continue.
Okay. Good morning. So I'd like to, again, introduce my team because, again, we have 3 new division heads. We have 5 new auditors since the last 6 months. Really good news since the last time we've met. And again, I'd like to present this. I was thinking about how to present our team. And instead of, I thought about, the traditional line and block, but I like this method of presentation because this represents our approach, the 360 leadership approach, that everybody's a leader in the office. Everybody has equal importance about our success, and we have a responsibility to lead up laterally as much as I have to do. And I think I'm probably led more than anybody else because I have a number of folks coming up to me and providing their good ideas, their recommendation, their approach on what we should be doing. So I get led as much as anybody else in the organization. And before I even talk about this, so it's more of a Venn diagram of the way we do business. We joked about this, Debbie and I, yesterday. Debbie Brooks, who, she's been with us for a long time, and she's not only, her official title is financial analyst, but she does everything else from administrative, logistics, personnel, and she's my executive assistant. She does everything, and we kind of joked that I should have maybe Debbie in the middle of those circles there. So, and that really, we joked about that, but that is maybe more true than not. She's a lot of the glue that holds us together. So thank you, Debbie. Thank you. Again, and then we have Jeff Whaley up here, and he is one of the oldest members, old and not in age, but as far as who have been here the longest. Cheryl got him to come down here from Tallahassee with her, and he's stuck it out with me, and I appreciate it. He's our systems administrator, but he's everything IT and so much else. He volunteers to do so many things outside of his job description. It's amazing. He's a certified computer forensic examiner himself and does just a great job for us. So our leadership team, I was going to ask them, each of them to come up here with me when I talk a little bit about them. And then for those who have supervised folks who are here, ask them to introduce their team. First is Calinthia Dillard. And Calinthia, you're not introducing anybody, but if you would, everybody see, yes, just stand up there so everybody could see it. Calinthia I promoted her to my deputy IG in June. She's been with the office since 2015 as our general counsel, but she is just such an integral part of what we do, so much more than general counsel. She is my alter ego in many ways, and I have such full trust and confidence in her. And so when I'm gone out and about, we thought a number of IGs have deputy IG, and we had not had one, so she's dual hatted. So this is in addition to all of her duties that she does as general counsel. She's also my deputy IG. She's practiced law more than 19 years in the private and public sector. Before coming to us in the IG office, she's was with the school board for a number of years and did some very important work for them. She's involved in so many things in the county, which we really use this as a venue to, again, to get input from the county about how we're doing, what we're doing, but also it's a great image for us, and she is a great person in county involvement. She's the president of the West Palm Beach chapter of Lynx. She is on the board of directors for the YWCA of Palm Beach County and also the Forum Club. She's the past president of the F. Malcolm Cunningham Bar Association and the Virgil Hawkins, Florida chapter National Bar Association. She's the former chair of the Florida Bar's Grievance Committee for the 15th Judicial Circuit, Division A. She's also a graduate of Leadership Palm Beach County. So, I mean, she is just such an asset to the office and to me. So, thank you, Calinthia. Next, and if you have any questions, too, of any of our folks along the way, please feel free to stop, ask. Next, Karen Mayer. Karen, if you would come on up. Karen was just promoted to our contract oversight manager in June of 2017. Though she's been with the office since March of 2015 as a contract oversight specialist, she was promoted as the division head in June. She's got over 42 years of public service in county, state, government, and in nonprofits. She got her start here in contracting in Florida, in contract management, went to Ohio for a number of years. She was there a human resource director, and she is a certified senior professional in human resources. Before coming back to Florida, just to show the quality and the leadership we have, back in the state she came from, she was the superintendent of the County Board of Development Disabilities, serving over 900 customers. Her staff had 150 folks, so I think she can handle the two that she has right now. It should have three. We're down one in there. And with a budget of over $14 million. So that's Karen. And Karen, if you would mind introducing Tony.
Well, we're the few and the small but mighty, and today we have Tony Montero here, who is one of our contract oversight specialists. Tony comes to us from FAU, and his background is in purchasing and procurement. Tony was an Air Force veteran, began procurement in the Air Force, and kind of continued in that vein. So he's had procurement experience at the federal level, at the state level, and he has boundless information, really a very helpful kind of guy, and we're delighted to have him. The other member of my team is Tiffany Thomas, who is not here today. Tiffany has a lot of procurement experience also, worked for the county, and brings a different viewpoint. So it's nice that we have a mixture of people. Each of us has kind of a specialty, but work together very well as a team. So we're very proud to work for John and happy to be here.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, Megan Gaylord. Megan joined the OIG. Now, you're talking about a fast mover, somebody up. She joined our office in February of this year as the audit manager. And in June, when our audit director decided to go back to the school board, Bob Bliss was previously an auditor in the school board, went back home, she became the acting or temporary director of audit. She did such a fantastic job of running the organization, of hiring new auditors. At the time, if you remember last time we were down, we had 4 auditors out of our 8. We went down when Bob left, so we had 3 auditors. And so since she's been here, we've been to 4, went to 4, now we're up to 7. We only have 1 position open, and that's the audit manager. So she's really filling 2 positions, the audit director and the audit manager. Done just a fantastic job for us here. She served over 15 years in the private and local government service in both accounting and auditing. Before coming to us, she was the internal controls manager for the Division of Facilities and Management at Collier County Board of County Commissioners. Super smart, lot of certifications. For example, she's got her master's in science, summa cum laude, from Florida Gulf Coast University in both accounting and taxation. She's got 5 certifications: certified internal auditor, certified fraud examiner, certified government financial manager, certified government audit professional, and a certification in risk management assurance. She's also a joiner, which is what we're really pushing for and trying to do. She came here in February and she immediately joined our local chapter of the Institute of Internal Auditors, and she's the vice president of our local chapter. I mean, she's not only a leader in our office, but she's a leader in the community. She's also on the National Internal Control and Fraud Prevention Technical Committee of the Association of Government Auditors. So, I mean, I'm just so happy to have her. And Megan, if you could introduce your folks who are here.
Thank you. First, it's a distinct pleasure to be in this role and capacity and have the opportunity to serve Palm Beach County and work for John, who's been an amazing leader and mentor through this process and the transitions. None of it could be done without his position and his role in the leadership. We've hired a series of auditors this year. We have 5 brand new auditors, with the longest being here for about 4 months and the shortest being here for about a month and a half, as well as our 2 auditors who've stayed through all the transition and changes. I'd like to introduce my smart, dedicated, hardworking, and outstanding team that this job couldn't be done without, starting with our longest term auditor, Donna Wisniewski, who's been with our office for a little over 4 years, who's been here before you before. She's extremely smart and dedicated with a CPA, a government financial manager certification, and a certified Inspector General's auditor certification as well. She's currently finishing up a project that you should see at the next committee meeting. Next, we have Bonnie Welsh, who's been here for a little over 3 years and was recently promoted to an Auditor 2 from an Auditor 1 position based on hard work and dedication to the office. She's also a CPA and a Certified Inspector General Auditor. The first new hire to our team is Radi Edrova. She's from Collier County. She's been with us for about 4 months and came in with immediate productivity, helping us wrap up one of the transitory audits that started with a different auditor and rolled into the new group. She recently, about 2 weeks ago, just received her first certification as a certified audit professional for government, specializing in Yellow Book, which is our certification standard. Next, we have Kathy Davis, who's our most recent hire. She's been here for about 2 weeks now, maybe 3. So she's brand new and already an immediate asset, helping us build the template and the backbone for the structure to do more standard projects. She's a CPA and also has the Six Sigma Yellow Belt certification. Next is Flo Roth. She's been here a little bit longer. She also has the Six Sigma Yellow Belt certification, has been an immediate asset, and specializes in grants. Hillary Bajan is And Auditor 3, she came in immediately being productive, helping guide newer auditors, establishing the backbone, and is in charge of helping with the computer system configuration for Teammate. She came from the Health District. Then we have Jennifer Timms, who has more than 30 years of experience in revenue tax auditing and has been able to come in and immediately become productive, taking on multiple audit projects and leading the way for some of the smaller entities that don't see us as frequently.
Thank you, Megan. See, we got an impressive team that she brought aboard immediately. And now I'm going to talk about a guy I'm really impressed with, Stu Robinson. Stuart Robinson. Where are you, Stuart? Yeah, come on up here. Stuart is our new Director of Investigations, and he just came aboard on 30 October. We got him from, he was the Supervisor of Investigations in the Broward County Office of Inspector General the past year and a half. Before that, Stu is a retired FBI agent who spent his last 8 years here in the Palm Beach County office. So, I mean, he knows everybody here very successful. He had 26 years with the Bureau as not only a special agent, but a supervisory special agent, specializing in public corruption, financial crimes, civil rights matters. He taught public corruption and financial crimes investigation techniques, interviewing techniques for the FBI, not only here in the United States, but internationally. He's a case agent on numerous high-impact federal undercover investigations. He also has his Juris Doctorate from Indiana University and is a fellow alumnus from Northwestern University Kellogg School of Management executive course. So I am just excited to have Stu on board. Again, he's a team player. He's a person who's had an immediate impact on the office and reached out and had an impact with our partners in local law enforcement at the state and the federal level. So Stu, I'll let you introduce your folks.
Thank you very much, John. Before I introduce the fine people that are with me this morning, as a Palm Beach County resident for the past 9 years, it was an extraordinary opportunity for me to come back home to Palm Beach County to take this role with the Inspector General's office. And my first 8 or 9 days has proven it to be an extraordinary decision. The people that I have met in my first couple weeks here and the ability to impact the community for the better is truly motivating. And I've started digging in and can't wait to continue that process. Let me introduce, there's 2 other extraordinary people that are from the investigative staff that are with me today. First, Jean Areola. Jean has a master's in criminology. She's a certified Inspector General investigator, and probably most impressively, she spent back in the day 3 years as a patrol officer in a New York City Bronx housing development. So she's an awfully nice person, but she's also fearless. She's been with us at the Palm Beach County Office of the Inspector General for a little under a year. And also fearless and extraordinary is somebody that you all have met before, Angie Rentz, who's our intake manager. I owe Angie an extraordinary debt of gratitude already for putting up with the unlimited questions from me per day about how the office does things and why they do things. And she is not just a lady of extraordinary knowledge. She's one of the original employees of the Palm Beach County Office of Inspector General. She's also, intake manager sounds like a dry title, but what it really means is she's the face of our office to the public. And her warmth and grace makes her the ultimate choice for that role. She treats people with class, dignity, and an incredible smile, and we're going to leverage that into helping the public. So thank you very much for the opportunity to meet you all today, and I look forward to the future working for the public of Palm Beach County.
Okay, thank you, Stu, and the team. Yeah, so I think I thought it was important enough, again, turnover of folks that we've had and that you see the incredible group of folks that I get a chance to work with and who serves Palm Beach County in guarding our taxpayers' dollars and in trying to help make good government better. So a good crew of folks. These are, again, just a list of our certifications overall. I think we've got around 24 different certifications in the office. Incredible group of people. Okay, now to the what we've been doing with this good group of people here. I'm going to talk about here are the areas that we break it down. First of all, intake and investigations. Intake, as it all comes through, again, starting with Angie, is the calls, the complaints, the letters all come through to Angie. We're showing here, comparing our past 6 months with the previous 6 months. And you can see we're pretty steady. A little bit up there on correspondence and again on calls. So this is overall what comes in the door to us often that we start out with.
Question.
Sir.
If you look at the pattern between the previous and the current 6 months, the number of correspondence that led to initiation of investigations decreased. And ultimately, the referrals were less than 50, were about 50% of the previous. Is there any particular reason or cause for that change that you've been able to identify?
Yeah, not that we've, in my experience, not only here in Palm Beach County the past 3.5 years, but back in my federal, as a federal IG, there are ebbs and flows of when, calls come in and go down. I can't identify, they have gone down, and they've gone down from the previous 6 months too. We could say that, well, maybe that's because of the positive effect that we're having. But I wouldn't go that far, because just what I've seen in my experience, we could also have a spike during this next 6 months. And that spike could be because a lot of times you might have a number of complainants or a number of people who saw the same thing, and so, or there may be a certain action. Like right now, there's a number of things going on in the news that you've seen with different communities that sparks a lot of people to come forward, and some of those people who come forward with important information that we need. So sometimes there are certain events in the news or certain elections or different things that can spike not only the calls that come in, but that ultimately result in an investigation that we're doing. So yeah, I'd like to say this is because of the positive impact, that we are making a difference, and so complaints are down, but I can't, from an objective perspective in my experience, I really could not say that, so.
Okay. Just one of those questions.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And again, this has been consistent here, that where the complaints come from. Most of our complaints come from citizens, that they call the office. And again, a lot of the complaints that we receive or call, they're not just, again, complaints, but correspondences too from the citizens. Sometimes, a number of times they are about suspected fraud, waste, abuse, mismanagement, something that's not going right in government. But we get a lot of calls from the citizenry that they don't know who to call, so they call our office. And we link them up to the right office. And again, I've told you this before, and that's part of our motto, one of our mottos, that we never say to anybody who calls in, not my job. When people call in, we'll link them up to the right agency, state, federal agency, or if this is, something, we get calls that are, again, entirely off the wall of fraud, waste, and abuse, but we still try to link them up if they have a problem, where they can go, at least who the person is, the agency who can help them solve their problem. So we get a lot of calls from citizens in that vein. And then a lot of our complaints are anonymous that we receive, and that's very common in the Inspector General world. Okay, now breaking it down to our investigations. 13 active investigations. And again, some of these investigations that we're doing are more long-term investigations. Some of them we're coordinating with our local, state, federal law enforcement partners that, again, take a long time. And sometimes they may be even, after we've investigated them to a certain extent, it may not result in a report, but it goes into the law enforcement arena. So, and then they take it over. So sometimes we're the unsung heroes on a number of these significant cases. Sometimes we get credit at the end, like I think the time before last, for example, with the state attorney's office, a number of times we do a case, we turn it over to them, and then arrests are eventually made, and it comes out in the public, oh, this was initiated from our office and some initial investigations. So a number of times, eventually, we will get some credit on those, but in the meantime, sometimes we just do some investigations at doing our job for the citizens of the county that may never be known as much of our involvement. So this time, no cases from our investigations referred to any of the law enforcement, Palm Beach County law enforcement. We issued 2 reports. We made 9 recommendations, and I'm going to talk about, this is an interesting one. None of them were accepted, and we talked before because there was some 6 months you've seen, I've had all of them 100% acceptance, and it looks like great, and we said, hey, if they're all accepted, something may be wrong, but you asked too, if they're all not accepted, what does that mean? So I'm sure you have a question on that.
This is Riviera Beach, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
That's Riviera Beach, and that's the investigation I'll talk about on the next slide. We sent it, and it had recommendations to do with checks and balances and laws, or checks and balances that involved the city commission, the way they're using their vehicles, and it was before the city manager was released, and he could not get an answer for us at the time, and so we will re-engage again once things settle down to try to get some answers, whether they're going to accept those and implement them or not. But they have just not responded to our recommendation. They did not respond to that report. So the 2 reports we have, the first one was the Riviera Beach case that we did on the vehicle use, that we found that some of the current and former council members who had received, previously they received a $500 a month car allotment, and then they voted to increase that to $750 a month car allotment, that some of them were coming in again and using the city vehicles instead of their personal car, that they were receiving this $750 a month for them. We also found that the city didn't verify, the city came out that they possessed vehicle insurance coverage in driving their car, which is pretty standard when you get a car allotment, that you have to show that I have insurance for this. The city did not adhere to the requirements, their own requirements, that they said anybody who drives a car or has a car are supposed to take a defensive driving course, and they were not enforcing that. And then finally, ensuring that the people who were driving their cars had valid current Florida driver's license. So again, Chris Dykeman, who is not here, our investigator who did that investigation, did an excellent job on that. This is his day off, but did an excellent job on that. He's done a number of things for us that are doing very, very good. But again, the 9 recommendations we made, again, we never received a response from the city on that. Now, this is an unusual case in the fact that you usually don't see these, but we made a small correspondence, an investigative-related report on this, and this highlights what Stu was talking about, the work of Angie Rents. It's just not intake, because what she does, once she receives complaints, you know, she does a lot of preliminary, she does like the preliminary inquiry on a lot of our matters to see, you know, is this going to turn into an investigation and we work with her on the evaluations of what we should do. A lot of things get handled immediately with her that may or may not turn into investigation. In this case, we had a complaint that the city received, you know, they had an agreement with the county government, and they received money back in 2007 so they received this $134,000 to assume the responsibility to maintain Barwick Road. Well, so what Angie does, before we do an investigation, she coordinates and gets down with the city and just asks the basic questions. What's the story behind this? Well, they respond back that, yeah, they acknowledge they did receive the money. This was Delray. They did receive the money, but they only spent $3,225 of that money, and they never spent the rest of the money. So, in essence, the city, the county taxpayers gave the city of Delray this $130,000 some dollars, and they only used a small portion of it and had not returned the rest to the county. So she then put the recommendation back to the county that, hey, the city has some of county's money down there that we recommend that you go back and retrieve that county money for the county taxpayers. So it never resulted in an investigation, but it highlights some of the work that she does, and in this case, it had a financial impact. Yes, ma'am. We have not seen that yet, so we will follow up on that. Contract oversight. Again, this was Karen, and again, our unsung heroes, and many times up here too, of all the proactive contract oversight, monitoring contracts, attending meetings, ensuring that there's fairness, helping, guiding, giving advice along the way in the procurement process and the contract process across the county. I kind of put some of these numbers in, no, this is coming up. Their overall activity, and they issued 2 reports. They made 3 recommendations, and here we go again, 0 responses. Now, this is another interesting situation because these responses, or this report, and we'll go into the details of it later, was issued to Loxahatchee Groves. And Loxahatchee Groves has a very unique form of their government in that they're one of the only that we know of municipalities in the state that, and we could not find, there may be some other nationally, that entirely contracts out its management of the city. So you have a city council, and then so they contract out, the city manager even is a contract employee, and so all the functions that are done through the city are done through his contract or other contracts that he managed. So it's a little more difficult when we're trying to get responses back from Loxahatchee Grove, because some of them, when it's dealing with a contract and a contract employee, has to go to the city council for a resolution and a response to us. And then to do that, of course, because of the sunshine laws, they have to do this in an open meeting and make discussions. So it takes sometimes longer to get the process back, whether they accept it or not, and then it takes longer sometimes to have even accepted recommendations implemented. So that's a very unique, and again, that's the only municipality in Palm Beach County with this type of a setup.
Are there any ramifications to a municipality for either not responding or not accepting the recommendations?
The ramifications are on the public. The way our ordinance states, we make recommendations. We have a lot of the IG, we have a lot of powers and authorities to go get information, to subpoena information, and we can, say pretty much independently what needs to be said, but our main function is shining a light. And at that point, it goes back to the citizens of a municipality or the county to take the action. So if they refuse to take action, all we can do is, again, bring this to the public light and make sure that the citizens know this is your government are not accepting our recommendations, and then leave it up to democracy to work. And that is similar to all inspector generals at all levels of government.
Is this information published, other than this committee meeting? Is it published in a manner that is forwarded directly to the citizens of those municipalities so they become aware of it?
All of our reports are sent back to the city, to the management. Most of these reports end up in the media, in usually either the Post or the Sun Sentinel, sometimes on the local news, the evening news. So they're in the news. We follow up then every quarter on open recommendations. So we continue to go back to, as according to our national standards, we have to go back and continue to ask for them. And then in our annual report that we publish, we note any outstanding recommendations of significance that are over that year old. So we put them in. They're posted in libraries. So we try to get word out in many ways. And this is just a pie chart here to show you where we're putting our oversight, the monitoring activities. And as you can see, most of our monitoring activities are in the cities, 30% on the county. Now to the report specifically, and that back to Loxahatchee Groves. In our contract oversight, again, we monitor all the contracting activities, and Tiffany Thomas, who's not here, again, one of our very good contract specialists, was monitoring, and we found that the basic finding is that the town did not provide adequate documentation to support the proposals, that proposals were evaluated in accordance with the criteria outlined in the request for proposals. So we made some recommendations. One, that the town should evaluate the proposals according to their request for proposals. Pretty basic. And then two, they should document it. They really did not have adequate documentation of how they evaluated their proposal. And also recommended they should consider having a selection committee with more than one person to better document and award the recommendation. Now this is, again, I've been asked that people think, is that proper and legal just to have one person on a selection committee? There was nothing illegal or in a violation of any standard that we found with that, having just one person as the selectee. But we did recommend that it's usually better to have more than one person on a selection committee, and two, that they can not only ask the questions, it could be more transparent and more present the appearance to the public of fairness, and again, they could help each other document it properly. And again, management has not responded to our 3 recommendations here as yet.
One question before you go on. One of the interesting points that you raise in this particular slide is, you already moved?
No, it's up there.
Okay, all right. No, next slide. Okay.
This one here?
Yeah, that's what I wanted.
Okay.
Relative to the county allowing one vendor to expand the scope of the services that it's responded to the RFP, is that policy or was that an exception? Because that's not a consistent RFP process.
That was to expand the scope, that was one of the allegations. We found they did not expand the scope.
Oh, okay.
So on that one, that part of the things that we looked at is that somebody believed that they had expanded the scope and that they did services that were not requested, and that they didn't allow others. What we did, we looked into that matter, and we found, no, none of that was true.
Okay.
So this is a good news story in the fact that sometimes the IG, we don't just put out reports and we just don't look into something if we can find and show the bad or substantiate it. The difference between what IGs often do as opposed to law enforcement, in law enforcement, you make a report when you arrest somebody. And, but here they make reports when they don't. But I mean, our point is to the public, here we're showing the public that one, we take seriously all types of complaints. We look into these in depth if they have, there's merit to look into that. And here in this case, we confirmed the county, in this case, their Office of Small Business was doing things properly. So this is a good thing. We assured the county where there was questions about how they were doing business. We came back and did an independent assessment and can assure the county now and our taxpayers that, hey, there may sometimes look like something was not proper, but when we got down to it and looked at the details, everything was done in accordance with standards. So this is a good news story.
Okay. Thank you.
Then again, the 1 penny sales tax, Tony Montero, who we introduced you before, he's done a fantastic job on this. And when the 1 penny sales tax came out, what Tony took the lead for us, and we produced this report in and of itself. We published this report, it was for leaders in government, in the county and the municipalities, and for the citizens, because there's a lot of information out there. There's some good sources for it, but we tried to gather up a lot of information about this, and as an independent office, so we didn't have a dog in the fight. So we wanted to be the independent office to gather information together for the leaders, for the citizens, to go to see where is all this money going, who's providing oversight for this money, and included was this 179 pages of detailed information of charts and graphs for each city, where this money is going and how they intend to spend it. And we received a number of positive feedback from particularly the municipal city managers came back to us and said, they really appreciated not only seeing their city information out there, but being able to compare how they plan to spend their money compared to the other municipalities. So we had a lot of positive feedback on this report. It's a proactive, just one of those outreach type of reports that we did.
I'll give you additional positive feedback. I've actually read the report, not necessarily all the tables, but I've looked at the tables that interest me. But the content of the report, the proactivity of the report, just the overall quality of the research and the information that you've disseminated, it's just a great document.
Thank you. Thank you, Tony. Great job. He did a great job, so. And again, continuing what we're going to be doing on the 1 penny sales tax. We are, even though, again, we did not have any more personnel from our last request, we're going to continue to do our job, and we're going to provide oversight for that 1 penny sales tax, the millions of dollars that are out there being spent. We're going to continue to monitor the contract awards of how they're being awarded. We're going to monitor the committee meetings who are overseeing the penny sales tax. We're going to report back to the public on what we found along the way. And again, we're going to continue our contract oversight office, particularly is that office that gives guidance and share best practices as the cities, the county receive this money to spend it, to make sure that we're spending it proper and in the best, most efficient and effective way we can.
2 questions. The first question is, when you say that you're reviewing the monthly revenue distributions, define revenue distribution.
I may have Tony.
I'm sorry I made you get up.
Thank you, sir. The Department of Revenue monthly will publish on their website. You could just download it. All the revenue distributions that they make to the county, to the municipalities, and the penny surtax is specifically identified in there. So every month we've been downloading it, track how much each municipality and the county got, also the school board, and we graph that, and we could see where we're falling behind or are we ahead of our revenue expectations. Right now, we're just a little bit behind on what we wish we could have gotten if you do a straight line over 20 years, maybe about $1 million something short.
Over a 20-year
currently.
period?
Since the beginning, since
Since
March.
the beginning, since inception. So do you, reviewing means different things to different people. Does that mean that you're charting all 39?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You're not sampling. You're,
No, not sampling. We're tracking it, and we run that against the activities that we do in contract oversight. My manager looks at the data. We know which municipalities may be at risk or which projects are riskier, and we look at the money that they're planning to use the infrastructure surtax for, and that may lead us into taking on an activity to go in there and do some extra oversight on projects.
so it's both risk management and a reality check.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Great asset again. Tony is just fantastic. Audits.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, can I ask a question?
Of course.
Thanks. Before we move to audits on contracts, in terms of the role of the IG in monitoring contracts, does that provide feedback during the process, or are you just sort of watching how it goes?
Yes, thank you. That's an excellent question because we do provide feedback along the way. So we do not just passively look. We try to be silent when we can and let people do their business. But if we see something ahead of time in the paperwork that seems off track or that we could provide some comment, we'll provide comment. We'll provide best practices. And again, it's a fine line. We don't get involved in management decisions, so we don't make decisions. We might make some recommendations if we clearly see something is not, if they're not in compliant with their own RFP or if they're not in compliant with some law or regulation, we'll let them know, hey, this doesn't look like it's consistent with your, so we try to help them, one, not get off track, and number two, there's a number of times we provide best practices as we're going around from other cities that they may have done something similar to this project that they'll say, hey, wait a minute, we recommend you get in contact with this other city who just went through this process.
So in terms of, just evaluating the activities of that department, the actual reports isn't necessarily reflective of, sounds like a fair amount, doesn't it?
Exactly, yeah. Most of contract oversight's work is like that iceberg. It's below the water line. So a lot of their work, of the proactive, very positive work, that's why I call them my unsung heroes. Most of that work, we can tell you how many meetings we had and recommendations, but few of those activities rise to some reports that we're actually doing a project, or we find something that is just that happened after the fact that, we need to make a report on this for a learning lesson for others, for not only the municipality or county, but for others. Okay, now we move to audits. And we issued one report this time. And happy news, we made 13 recommendations and all 13 were accepted. So we did have something to balance out those other recommendations that we had made. There were 12 that no action taken and 13 were accepted. So this was the activity for this time, and I'll go into that report. That was on POMTran. We did a fuel, and this was part of an overall, in the county, if you recall, last 6 months, we've been looking at different municipalities and areas where the use of fuel and the fuel process. So this was part of a countywide project that we had ongoing for the last few times that I've been here. And so what we found some minor control weaknesses that Palmtran had. Some of those were that they needed to review and approve the process for contract invoices, reimbursement process for fuel expenses, and alternate fuel credit filings. That's some of the areas that we found. Corrective actions. Now, again, Palmtran worked very well with us. They're another good organization that when we came in here very closely with us. They concurred with all of our recommendations. They began, as we found things along the way, what we like to see, taking corrective action immediately and not waiting on a report. So they were taking positive corrective actions along the way. For example, a few of them that they've made is they developed and implemented detailed written procedures and checklists and reconciliation process for the invoice review, the approval and prior of authorizing payments. They acquire legal and tax advice for potential fuel credits, and also obtain reimbursement of $9,000 that we found to a contractor that they had received reimbursements for fuels that they had given the city, that they received that back, the county Palmtran, that Palmtran should have received. So very positive. And I want to mention on this one, I bragged about Megan before, but she came in new to the office. We had the auditors who were working on this. One of them retired, the lead auditor retired toward the end of the field work. And the other auditor who was working with him on it left for a higher paying job and opportunities in Texas. And so we had this audit hanging out there. And so Megan took over as the lead with Roddy assisting. And so in addition to all of this time of being new on the job as a manager and then being thrust into the director's role, in the midst of all of that too, and hiring all these people, she also completed and worked with Palmtran on this very significant report. Okay, now I'm going to let Megan, I'm going to let her talk for just a minute. We developed this year a very unique and innovative way to do our annual audit planning. Most audit plans are based on you look at risk and you do these type of risk and they choose organizations. This is on a multiple entity, global area approach, which again is very unique. We briefed this and again, she had to sell this to me because I hadn't seen this approach before. And I was sold, we briefed this we have a quarterly forum of all the county IGs and internal auditors. They were very impressed with this, and some of them talked about adopting this approach for them because it gives you much more flexibility as you're doing the audits and yet identifying the areas. So I'll let Megan talk about that here.
Good morning again. So this year, we took the same standard process for compiling information and just compiled it a little bit differently. So we still reviewed all the risk assessment factors that we've reviewed in past with the online surveys, the reaching out to entities to get their direct feedback from their commissioners and top management. We went through different national surveys, both the Association of Government Accountants as well as the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners produce national level studies that take polls and tallies of different problems in different governments as well as private and public practice for the fraud instances where the highest risks reside. So we used a lot of the research that they had already conducted because their pool was every government in the country, whereas our pool was 42 different entities that we have. So we wanted to take a bigger risk assessment approach to get a better overarching global assessment area. We held different meetings. We reviewed the meetings, agendas, and local public concerns and areas that they had issues with, noted from the meetings that they held with their commissions. We also reviewed all the intake and complaint areas within the county over the last fiscal year to figure out the highest consistent global areas that had problems, weaknesses, and complaints. While doing that, we were able to evaluate 8 areas that had the highest level of global impact out of approximately 100 different global areas to more narrowly tailor that topic to revenue, grants, capital assets, purchasing cards, the infrastructure tax, contracts, travel reimbursements, and the accounts payable and expenditures processes. So now that we have those areas, we have completed 3 different, we're working on a 3rd survey, but we've completed 2 surveys to evaluate each different entity to determine who has the highest risk, and then we're making the selection secondary rather than at the time of announcement. So if we happen to pick an entity with a higher risk and they have an internal audit function that's already covering that risk, we can take our limited resources and put them somewhere else that's in greater need for the resources and expertise of our staff and office. We've had in the last couple years a few different duplication of efforts. We just did an audit of Palm Tran as the county's launching an audit of Palm Tran this year. So we're trying to more closely coordinate and work with our counterparts in internal audit throughout the area. That way we're not spending a lot of hours and countless hours reinventing the wheel and duplicating what they're already doing. With this method, we've been able to increase the productivity levels, the amount of audits we're able to complete at one time, and it's an easier method to train staff to provide them consistency that with the 8 areas and having 7 auditors, each auditor gets 1 area for the year, so one auditor will be assigned capital assets and be able to conduct anywhere from 2 to 5 audits within that area, reusing the same global audit plan and tailoring it for their specific entity. So it's a much easier way to train new staff so that they can have a little bit of consistency while they learn the office and the area. We've also implemented data analytics into our audit process for this year. So some of the newer audits, like the purchasing card audits, are using 100% testing with the data analytics to then narrow into just the higher risk transactions rather than doing random samples. So we can tailor our efforts to those specific risk factors that have a much higher rate of issue.
Next slide.
I've covered both.
Okay.
So both are covered. We currently have 10 audits that have been initiated this year and 3 surveys.
Before you go on, I'd like to just ask a couple of questions about your global area approach. First, and I think you've defined it, but sort of in a reverse engineering approach. How do you define a global area approach relative to multiple entities?
The global approach is based on different areas that have the highest incident rates. So by evaluating the area, example, revenue has a higher tendency of missing revenue opportunities, not having the proper documentation, not following concessionaire agreements and those type of things. It has a higher impact incident of problem. So once we select that area, then we go to a second risk assessment approach to either survey the cities directly, review the CAFRs or the budgets, or select based on lack of prior coverage so we know which areas to go.
So if you were to try to create a metaphor for this, are you going from 50,000 feet down to the runway, or are you going from the runway up to 50,000 feet?
50,000 feet to the runway.
That's what I wanted to make clear. One last question.
Sure.
What technology are you using in terms of your data analytics if you're basically testing 100% of your population?
We're using the IDEA data analytics system.
Okay, I was just...
We also have the capability in Excel Data Toolpack. It's another feature that gives you similar options within Excel if you're trying to do a quick sampling versus the encompassing sampling.
Ultimately, you use the two together anyway, so that's fine.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
So, I'm trying to look at the slides and look at this. You mentioned there were 10 audits initiated. Are we talking about?
Currently, we have 10 audits engaged, where we've issued an engagement letter, and they're currently either in, right at the letter's been issued. We have 2 we're waiting to schedule the entrance conferences, and we have 8 that are in field work.
Okay, and does that include, on the report, we have 3 carryover audits.
Correct.
So is that included in that number?
Yes. For every audit we complete, we issue an audit report when the audit's completed. And then to help with the status, we know this is a little bit different with it being global, and it doesn't exactly tell you where we're going at the time. What we're doing is we're issuing an implementation and update status report. So we issued the first one that tells the first 4 audits that were selected, the first 2 surveys that were completed. We're getting ready to send an updated implementation status 2 report out so you can see all 10 entities that are currently being audited as well as the surveys.
So this maybe goes to Mr. Carey, and that is, I have a concern that whether these reports really reflect the actual work. Because, you know, I'm sort of simple-minded. I look at a 6-month report and there's only one audit report issued in 6 months with, and I understand there were staff problems, but ultimately a division that is staffed with 5 auditors. All right.
This is,
And so I actually had the same question about investigations. That it seemed to me in 6 months, there was one, what appears from these reports, one real investigation. I bet Mr. Ehrenberg, you know, undertakes lots of investigations in a 6-month period. And so I'm just, first, whether the report accurately reflects the actual work being done at the office. If so, I have concerns that we're maybe not being as productive as we need to be given the staffing. Or second, whether the report is not accurately reflecting the actual work being done in the office, and perhaps we can think about how to better reflect that in these reports.
that's an excellent question, and I anticipated that in seeing. First, with the audits. Again, we got down last year to 3 auditors. And again, with this one report that it was particularly troublesome because the auditors who was running, both auditors left. And so we had to pick things up. And we've got another audit that will be coming out soon. So one, it's the nature of being short-staffed in audit. And number 2, it was the nature of audits we were doing. We've never done 10 I mean, Megan is very aggressive in the audits that we're doing now. This is the most audits we've ever had underway. But what we're doing in this plan, we're narrowly focusing the scope. Instead of before, the types of audits we were doing, we got very big, you know, and when you get a very big and multi-scope audit, it takes a lot of time. And in addition to that, if people leave and you have turnover during that, it really makes the time long. So we've corrected that. In the next 6 months, you're going to be seeing a number of more audits than you've ever seen before out of this office. Because again, we're doing focused audits now on where the real risk, instead of looking at everything to find this, we've used this a better risk assessment tool to, well, no, let's just look at these narrowly focused areas. So these 10 audits, again, we've never done that before, anything like this. So we have the staff who are highly qualified to do this. And number 2, we've got a new approach. So one, you'll be seeing more, certainly more audits coming about. In investigations, again, we are going to see, again, Stu and I have talked and right on board with me. We're going to be also changing our approach on investigations, because in investigations, and our state attorney knows this with his investigation, one of the, I'm trying to think the way to call it, a occupational hazard in investigations and at audits is you get going down a road and you start seeing more and more things that you need to look at, and it really delays the investigation from being done, or audit. And so what we're doing with Stu, we are now sticking on point, and as we find other things, we're going to put them to the side and we're going to look at it separately. So we've redefined, and I've talked with Stu, and we're going to narrowly scope those. Okay, what are the allegations? We're going to get this done, and we may have multiple reports on one city or whatever with other areas, but we're not going as in the past, as we got more, it again expanded, and it did take a long time to the point of, so I understand that, and that is going to be, next 6 months, you'll see something, I think, very different.
And just to follow up, as I say, that's why I asked about the contract monitor.
Yes.
Is that it does seem that the report doesn't necessarily reflect the work being done, so that's why I
Yes.
asked. Monitoring, just reading.
Yes.
You know, so perhaps also think about whether there are other benchmarks that, whoops, is that, I think it's on, yes. Whether there are other benchmarks that might be helpful for us.
Yes.
In looking at sort of the productivity of the office.
Yes, thank you very much.
With regard to productivity of the office, would it be correct to say that there's a shift or an emphasis now on quality and as opposed to necessarily quality? And in terms of the change of your approach, audit approach?
I would not describe it as changing quality to quantity, or I think I would describe it as more focused. We're going to stay on focus on more limited areas so we can get that either audit or investigation, those specific allegations answered, asked and answered, investigated, and then out. And so we are focusing our effort now and not, we're going to refuse the temptation to expand the one project, and we're going to make multiple projects, still the same quality, and it will increase the quantity of it, but it's still the same quality of any project we do, but it's just going to be focused, and it will produce more quantity.
Right, maybe my difference between quality and quality and quantity, perhaps that was a bad distinction. But would it be fair then to say that what you're doing is you're making sure that you're utilizing your resources more effectively? It was effective before, you're just maximizing it.
Yes, that's very good. We're trying to utilize our limited resources more efficiently and effectively, and again, to show the public, to show you all what we're doing here.
Thank you.
So, yeah, the one issued report, that's just a report issue. That's not how many audit activities are ongoing and underway, right?
Right.
So
We
you're
have-
doing more than one. You've got 10
Well,
right
yes.
now?
We have 10 ongoing right now. We had 3 during that 6-month period, but we have 10 that we just start, for this year, launching this new fiscal year. So we had 3 that'll be carried over, and we're doing 7 more that we just issued that we are going to be conducting this year. We issued a letter to each one of the organizations that we're going to be auditing. So yeah, we're doing 10. They're doing more. We are doing more than we've ever done in touching and reaching out to more organizations than we ever have before. But again, we're going to be doing it in a more limited scope. Instead of us being there 6 months to longer, seeing us, they're going to see us for a few months, and then we're going to come back and we're going to produce a report.
So maybe another way to describe this, General, is you're really, it's a paradigm shift from the Henry Ford assembly line model to current technology, is the best way I could describe it. Okay.
Just a suggestion, because of all the good work you're doing, maybe in your report show how many are underway, because the report is just the conclusion of the
Yes.
audit, right? So you could have 20 going on, but if only one has concluded during that 6 months, nobody will ever know from these status updates that how much work you're doing and how much good work. So maybe in order to give yourselves credit for how much you're doing, just add that in.
All right, thank you. Yeah, we'll do that. Thank you, Megan. Training and outreach. Again, this is part of our foresight, insight. Again, making presentations of who we are as an office, best practices, red flags, fairly consistent from what we've been doing. Again, and this is mainly one of my main jobs, getting out and about, of giving presentations not only to people in government, out of government, who we are, what we do, putting out publications. Some of those, this is just in a pictorialized of some of our outreach. Again, we get together quarterly with all of our county IGs and internal auditors and meet and share all what we're doing and try and coordinate our work. We do the lessons learned to the government, both county and the municipality, city managers. We issue tips and trends. We've issued a number of tips and trends this time on, these are 1 to 2 page educational information about, again, best practices, things to watch out for. And again, I've spoken to, again, the Rotary International, the municipal clerks. Just a couple weeks ago, I went up and I spoke at the annual training conference for the Florida Government Finance Officers Association. They asked me to speak about what's the difference between accountants, auditors, internal auditors, external auditors, and inspector generals, and discuss with them, okay, what's the difference, the uniqueness in what we all do, and about internal controls. Personnel and staffing now. And two, I want to make a correction and an apology. This was brought to my attention by the chair. I've been putting up there that the average cup of coffee is worth around $1.75. And he was asking me, where am I getting my coffee? And so I did some research on that, and my data was old. Can you believe the average person spends $2.70 on a cup of coffee that's without any tip. So anyway, so that 170, it goes between 174 and 175, what the taxpayers are paying for our office is really, quite less than a cup of coffee a year. So that's what they pay for us per year, 175, as compared to a cup of coffee, which is $2.70. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for bringing that to my attention. And I wanted to put this, our budget, our personnel, again, we have 23 people, and to compare, I put this in another perspective on this chart. On your left, again, that's authorized positions. As you know, we have 40 authorized positions, what we should have to provide the proper oversight for the county and the cities, but we have funded 23 positions, 57%. Now you take that 23 people down into the chart on the right. So that same figure there in comparison, we have 23 people to oversee 861 auditable units, the way you break units down in the audit world. So bottom line, it just shows we're have a few people to do a lot, but again, like the Marine Corps, we'll continue to do a lot with very few, and we're going to do it very well. So we've got a big job, but again, we're charging ahead. And again, I ask, as you know, this was from earlier in the year. This shows it another way. The delta between that 40 that we're structured to operate under and the 23 we have, that equals 17. So we've got a 17 delta position right there, unfunded positions. Well, I put together at the first of the year after the lawsuit ended and it came back to the county, I went back to the drawing board and I did a zero-based review. Okay, really, let's look at this again. What are our IG requirements? Well, first of all, I found out that was a very good, accurate assessment. 17 people is pretty much on its face. You can figure, originally we were set up 20 people to do the county, and then we had inherited 38, now 39 municipalities. Well, it takes and you saw the charts, more than double the work. Most of our work is in the cities. So that 20, or that for the 40 number was pretty accurate. But I said, okay, what I consider as minimally acceptable, what I would need to really provide adequate oversight for all of our organizations, we need 10 folks. But then on top of that, I said, okay, 10 folks is what I really need, but for FY18, how about just giving me 4? So we went from 17 to 10 to 4, and as you know, I was provided 0. So, that's okay. We'll continue to do our work with what we have. Summary of this year's highlights. Okay, just a summary now for the whole year of where we've been. Again, we dropped in audit. We dropped down to 3 people. Now we're up to 7 out of the 8. So it says lows and highs. I know you normally say highs and lows, but I like to say lows and highs because we ended on a high note. So we've gone down to 3, but now we've come up to 7. Turnover. Had all the division heads turnover, but all of our division heads, I mean, I cannot tell you how happy I am with our division heads and our leadership team, that we're all going in the same direction. And again, we promoted our general counsel to deputy IG. You're going to see this chart in a little while differently, but these are the only numbers for just fiscal year 2017. So these are just the totals for 2017, how we guarded taxpayers' dollars. And the question cost, 11.3, a little over $11.3 million. Potential savings, 178,000. 15 referrals to law enforcement. Again, one of those was from our one of our report that was there was a working with the public corruption unit. Issued 10 reports with 50 recommendations, and we had 784 calls that came in for just fiscal year 17 alone. Now where we're going, we're on the downward slope here. Our vision, again, I think today we are positioned better than ever before with the team we have in place. You've heard us talk about the way ahead we're going with audits and investigations on the focus, kind of the refocus and the relook. And again, the team that I have in place, that we are closer than we've ever been, and that achieving that to be able to make continuous positive change with an inspired and skilled team. And again, these continuous improvements, as you see, it's not only outside, it's inside. We're looking at our own continuous improvements. In an audit, again, I put 9 audits. We just initiated another audit yesterday, so it's actually 10 audits that we have ongoing right now, which is a change, and that's on Riviera Beach. We're looking at Riviera Beach purchase cards and audits. 3 surveys out there. We're implementing our teammate automated system. Investigations, again, we talked about that, focusing them and working closer than ever before with our local, state, and federal investigators. And then continue on with contract oversight and outreach.
Would you distinguish for us the difference between an audit and a survey?
An audit is an actual yellow book, government or red book standard audit, a full-blown audit. A survey is really just it's sending people information out to fill out a questionnaire. And survey can be used many different ways. I'm glad you asked that. In the way we're using it in this context, we're sending out questionnaires, and most of them are on like SurveyMonkey. Some of them they fill in. So they're questionnaires that they fill out back to us that help us then focus more on where we need to look specifically in what organization and what areas. So they are, in the layman sense of a survey, that's what they are.
So it's very much Family Feud survey said.
Yes.
Okay. The other question I have is one of the points you make here under investigations is closer coordination with various levels of investigators. What is the most material change that you'll be executing that would enhance that process?
Well, one is Stu Robinson. I am so glad we've got him. He worked, again, his last 8 years was with the local FBI agent here. He knows very closely and is respected with the local law enforcement from, again, the municipalities to the public corruption unit and our FBI, local FBI agent. So one, he knows and has worked with them and is respected with them, and we plan on more one, speaking more of what we're doing, to compare notes with them, to not be overlapping. And then number two, there's a number of things from both the state and the local offices that it doesn't rise to the level of a prosecution. So there's a number of things that it doesn't rise to that level, but we need to be talking to them. So it might come back to us that nevertheless, it needs to be investigated, and the public needs to be aware that in this case, again, there may not be any state laws or federal laws that come to the level that we could prosecute, but there are county ordinances. They don't take it on. If it's a county ordinance or something that we may need to pass over to the Commission on Ethics, there may be other laws that it's really not on their radar scope. And so it's a mutual liaison and communication. So not only what they're doing, so we can coordinate our efforts with them better. So that's where we're working. Again, Stu's the person who immediately, since he came on board, we've had meetings and coordinations and some really good, I think, potential work for both of us. It'll be better for all of us.
Okay, thank you.
Now we're going to summarize and end up just with all the things to date. Where have we been since we've been in existence as in an office? Created in June of 2010. $35 million plus in question costs we've identified. $22 million plus in potential savings. 125 referrals to law enforcement or to the County Commission on Ethics or to the State Commission on Ethics. 14 actual arrests or prosecutions directly from the cases that we've worked since we've been in a short 7 years. Again, we made 631 recommendations and over 10,000 calls and complaints and listening to the citizens of Palm Beach County that's come into the office. And again, ultimately, back to where I started, making that mark on enhancing public trust in our government, that somebody's looking out, that our government, we tell the bad things, we tell the good things, that our government is accountable, that people care about integrity, care about efficiency and effectiveness. That concludes my brief.
Thank you, General. At this point, even though we've asked questions as we've just sort of gone along, do any of the committee members have any comments or questions? Your turn.
Oh, okay. I'm Dave Aronberg, State Attorney. Mr.
Nice.
Chairman, thank you. Mr. Carey, you're doing a great job, and thank you for your service, and your team is really impressive. I just have a couple questions. Do you have a total figure since 2010 of how much money the office has cost taxpayers and how much money the office has saved the taxpayers?
I have that, but I don't have it in a slide. So it's been, we started out at $2 million a year. Let me see if.
No, that's something different.
So we have that information, but I'll put that in our annual report. How's that? Which by the end of December, we have to issue our annual report. But again, the office costs right now just $3 million a year. And so you figure 7 years, we started out with around it's gone between $2 million to $3 million. And so really I put that up here before, I know for you in our 6 months meetings. I didn't put it up this time, so.
Because it also, by the way, it's hard to see that figure there.
Yes.
For question costs. What does that say? I can't read that red on dark blue. 35 million, so.
Question cost.
Right.
And question cost, again, that's an area and again, that's an inspector general and auditor term often used. It may or may not be, some of that money may be wasted or not. It's a hard area to determine. Sometimes it is maybe wasted, that we just wasted and can't recoup that money. And a lot of that money is money where we are spending our taxpayers' dollars, but we're not accounting for it. And for example, a small case I like to give as an illustration, but it's very impactful. We did an audit of one of the cities a few years ago, and there were, I think, about 10 people who went up to Washington DC for a number of days. And the standard room rate up there is $200, government per diem room rate. It's okay. Well, we see all of these 200 here, and then we see one room for $500 a night. And we say, what's this? They said, well, that's the city council member stayed in that room. And we said, well, okay, did you have meetings in that? Did he have meetings or something special? Because sometimes you get larger rooms for meetings. They said, no. I said, well, then why did he need a $500 a night room and everybody else 200? He's a city councilman. That's what the city councilman wanted.
I'm gonna get to that.
We said, do you have a city policy that states city councilman gets a $500, that there's exceptions to this? No, but he's a city councilman. That's the way we've always done it. So that was a question cost. We found there was nothing illegal, improper, let's say illegal, or in violation of any city code or any county code. But we note that as a question cost because that's just not right. And we said you need to have, if you're going to do that, you need to have a policy that the public knows that this is the way you're accounting for their dollars, and it's just not randomly that you let, because I'm a city council, I get these exceptions. So that's a minor thing, but there's also a lot of times in contracts where they don't rebid them, where their own city council resolution said you should rebid this thing, and in doing that, you will save some money. So it's a general category, the question cost. The actual savings are future savings or recoupment savings are $22 million. That's the real solid number that we can count on. There are a lot of savings on that question for sure, but the one thing we can put more on potential savings is money they can go and recoup now, or if they change their mechanism to recoup in the future.
So if you just go by the 22 million in savings, then you could say that your office is a net positive for the county.
Yes.
If for 7 years you cost between 2 and 3 million.
Correct, per year. So,
Per year.
so maybe around $10 million. And so we've doubled
Yeah.
basically the potential savings. Now, I have no authority. That's the other thing about an IG. We make recommendations, but management has to go and recoup that. I can't make an IGs, and this is again a national standard. IGs don't recoup the money themselves. I can just go tell you, like in this case, the county, hey, you've got $130,000 out there that you gave to a city, and we recommend that you get that back. And so now it's up to the county to go recoup that money for the county taxpayers.
And then one more thing, if I could ask. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At one of the first slides said that most of your correspondence is complaints. Most are complaints, excuse me. And then what other kinds of correspondence do you get if not for complaints? That's I was just trying to get my head around that.
We get a lot of correspondence that aren't complaint, that are just kind of, a lot of our correspondence is when, for example, when people are complaining to a city council, they write a letter or they write letters to your office or somebody.
Oh, yeah.
They copy us. And so a lot of people copy our office or copy me, one, to give their management on notice, the IG has this. I've told you I've got a problem, or I don't like the way things are going here. And oh, by the way, just like your office, I've copied the IG here. Now, that may have an effect or not, and with some offices, with some organizations, that may have an effect. And those are things that I don't consider as complaints. I review every single one of them, and if there is something in there that we need to investigate, we will. But to me, those are general correspondence. I think that's one of the many type of correspondence we get. We're copied on a lot of information that we still have to, by our federal IG regulations, we have to log it in, and we're obligated to review every single one of those, and we should. That takes, and sometimes we respond back to the people if we can. Angie, is there another type of common correspondence we get? Is there another common correspondence we get that is not allegations?
No, actually what you explained is the most of them that they usually CC us, but there's a lot of times when they will call,
Yes,
that's not a specific complaint,
yes.
but we log it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people like, yeah, for example, you can imagine a lot of things in the newspaper
Yeah.
right now. People will send us this correspondence and they're not complaining, they're just like, IG, are you aware this is going on? So it's kind of, so to us, unless it's a formal complaint, we get a lot of things just like, you need to know, IG, this is going on. It's like, okay, thank you, we evaluate that and look at it, and it takes our time and effort to do that. And sometimes investigations come from those.
I would think you also get requests for advisory opinions, or just say, am I doing things the right way, or suggestions, am I doing things the wrong way? Is that,
Most
should
of
you get
those
some
come
of those?
from call-ins.
Okay.
And
They don't want to put that in writing, they're just
Right.
calling.
And the main office they call, usually for that, is our Contract Oversight Procurement Office. They receive so many calls and correspondence themselves about, hey, we're thinking about doing this, what do you think? And so they get a lot of information themselves that a lot of that information is not recorded because it didn't come through our hotline, but they get calls continuously on issues for advice, guidance.
Do you give advice and guidance? That's part of the job?
Yes.
Do you give legal advice?
No. We
Just
do not
just
give
guidance,
legal
right.
advice.
Okay.
We give,
Just
if
ask.
it's the policy that's black and white, and they
Right.
say, hey, we think we're going to go do this, and we say, well, did you know this is the policy in black and white? It says you can't do that. So, but we do not, we are asked a lot of times, and we do get some correspondence wanting legal opinions, and our response back to that is usually, particularly things that end up in the court. Look, I'm not a judge. Even if I did offer legal advice, it would be another attorney's legal advice, who you've already got yours, and some matters just have to end up in court, needs to be answered. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sure you've looked at this, but are there any other ways in which IG offices have been evaluated? Because the dollar issue is the easy one to look at, right? But ultimately, I don't think that's the measurement of success. The measurement of success is, an improved community, a more ethical business environment and government environment.
Yes.
So I'm just sitting here thinking, what are ways in which any of that can be measured for progress, and whether there are any accepted measurements out there, or I don't know. I worry that looking just at dollar amounts, because I'd love to see that we recouped $21 million, right? And then that's an easy thing to look at. But that, I don't think that is the measurement of success here. But I don't know how we measure success.
Thank you. I agree completely. And that I'm on the board of the board of the National Association of Inspector Generals, and I was also at the federal level, when I was up there, on the Council of IGs for Integrity and Efficiency. And these are one things that the continuing saga of history at IGs at all level, really looking for success. And there is no one standard for looking, what is success, because again, sometimes these things are very difficult in the IG world, because sometimes you could say, well, if you're not having complaints, or if you're not, you're successful. Well, maybe you're not competent and looking in the right places. So it's very difficult to say. So most IGs, what they do, again, like us, we were just assessed by the Florida accreditation to make sure we're doing things properly and right, and we have evidence behind our investigation. We'll be peer reviewed in 2018 again. We're also peer reviewed to make sure, and they come in and give an evaluation, and they give some advice if they can to share. So the long and short, that there isn't a standard, but I do caution, because I've been asked by sometimes counties and cities have asked me to give some advice on setting up IGs, because I've been an IG at a number of places. And I always caution not to set a standard of money or arrest, because so many things we do, just like in the case of this one that we looked at the county organization and found out they were doing everything properly. Bless you. They were doing everything properly and right. Well, in my mind, that's a success. We have done good. We have vindicated an organization where things were looking like they were being done improperly. We vindicated an organization, or sometimes people. There are some IGs when they've had pressure for, data. It's like, okay, I'm not going to do an investigation. Does this have to do with money? No, forget it. If it's an integrity issue, forget it, unless it's got money involved or a potential arrest involved. Or, on the other hand, if you start evaluating reports, well, okay, well then we can play this game, we'll cut up, and I'm not doing this just to generate reports, we're doing it to focus, but some IGs, well, okay, we're just going to do a whole bunch of baby reports that really are not that impactful. So it's a tough area. I would say the biggest thing you can do is find the right people, and they're going to train them up and let them loose, and they're going to do the right things, and hopefully you're going to see that trust in government. That's really the ultimate, is the trust in government increasing. The more the citizens know we're there, know we're looking, the citizens have a more trust in government. People want to come down here and do business in Palm Beach County. People want to come vacation in Palm Beach County because they know they have an office, not just an office, but in teaming with the people in government, that we've got a place that cares about integrity, accountability. So that's a long answer to a tough question.
Well, I have been here since day one, and have continuously struggled. What do we set for outcome measures? How do we evaluate? Because I think that is, our role is to sort of ensure that, things are being looked at, and I continuously struggle with sort of how we measure that. But
Thank you. I join that struggle daily myself.
I
Thank you.
would add to that. Audit is an interesting process. It's most of what auditors do, most of what anybody who is involved with representing the financial condition of the county, of an agency, of a municipality, whatever it may be. The work that goes into that representation is, for the most part, invisible. And what an auditor does in reaching the ability to express an opinion, that it fairly presents the financial position or the results of operations, or the effectiveness, efficiency, correctness, and compliance of expenditures or asset acquisitions or just day-to-day policies. It's the exception that we see and hear about. It's not the compliance. And compliance increases historically, and in every other study, including the studies you used, based upon the procedures that are known to occur and the impression it leaves with those who are accountable to the inspectors. So it is an extremely difficult thing to measure, because sometimes your best measurement is that there is nothing to measure.
Love that. Thank you.
On the trust in government point, I wanted to highlight the report on the surcharge, the 1 cent sales tax increase. That's huge, what your office is doing, what Tony did. I really want to compliment you, Tony, and the whole office, I'm sure, had a hand in it, and with your leadership. When we voted for that, we were putting literally our trust and faith in our government that that penny of every purchase we make or that percentage is going to go to a good use, or is going to at least be accounted for. It's like when you give money to charity and you wonder, where's my money actually going? But here we're being charged more, we voted for it, we're trusting, and to have the IG overseeing that without the increase in the budget for positions, but taking on that monumental task which I think is super important, very, very currently. That's tremendous. So as a taxpayer, I thank you. As a commissioner, to know you all are out there watching over that, it's very much appreciated. And congratulations to your new team, your leadership. Very, very impressive people you have on board. I was wondering if I could clone them to add them to my own team in my office. Man, just some impressive credentials in this room. And if I was somebody looking to commit fraud, abuse, or waste, I should be very terrified of this group. So thank you, and I'll say what I say every 6 months, that, the taxpayers should be sleeping very well at night knowing you're looking out for them.
I agree with what you said, although I wasn't thinking cloning, I was just thinking about stealing them from my phone. But anyway, enough of that.
Yeah, I want to stress the importance of underscoring that in addition to potential monetary benefits or accomplishments, that there are certain immaterial benefits which are equally important, such as a consequence of the work of the Inspector General, local populations, having greater trust in local government, believing that local government is more transparent. I think those are very, very positive and important accomplishments. So maybe sometime in the future, you may consider the possibility of doing some kind of survey and trying to get a representative sample of the county and find out, gauge people's perception of local government as a consequences of having the Inspector General. But secondly, with regard to your investigative reports, I believe you said that you issue 9 recommendations and there haven't been no response. My question is it appropriate for the Inspector General and his leadership team to hold a press conference when they have these recommendations and sort of create a certain kind of ambience so that, people can't get them and then, okay, just ignore it?
There are some inspector generals that issue press releases.
Yes.
And we have called local, the press at times on certain, to get awareness of certain issues. On this issue, right now, I think there's a number of issues going on, particularly in Riviera Beach, that eventually we're waiting for it to kind of settle down. But there may come a time and place to do that, and I appreciate the thought there, so thank you.
Commissioner Cummerland, this is your first rodeo, so do you have any questions or comments?
No questions, but a comment. I'd like to thank Mr. Carey and his staff for actually hosting me back in August. It was really eye-opening, all that you did. I was familiar with your office, but I wasn't familiar with what that you had done. And you took almost 3 hours out of your day, and I really do appreciate it. And look forward to seeing you in 6 more months and continue the good work. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any of the public who'd like to make a comment at this point? Okay. In new business, item 6, and the one item that is scheduled is the IG contract renewal. Committee members, you've had an opportunity to review the proposed employment contract between Palm Beach County and John Carey, Inspector General. This would be identified as Amendment Number 1 to that original contract. Do any of you have any questions or comments or issues with the proposed amendment as presented to you? Commissioner Howard, I'm the committee member Howard.
I have none, and, I was thinking about this ahead of time in terms of what our actual role is in this, because I remember from the beginning that there is this difference between sort of the county and us, but to the extent to which we are like an advisory board or something, since we don't actually enter into the contract, I would move approval of extending the term for General Carey. I think the conditions of the contract are something really between him and the county, is how I remember it being before. So,
Other than the fact that I have to sign it?
Yeah, I don't really know some of that, but as I say, I would move that we approve extension of the
Okay.
I second the motion.
So I have an motion from Committee Member Howard and a second from Member Headley. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, hearing none, the amendment is approved for submission to the Board of Commissioners. Once more, is there any other further discussion from the committee? Any additional public comments? We're adjourned.